And we are live for a new episode for Happy Home, the Space Clearing podcast. And I couldn't be more excited, you guys. Emily is here. And for those of you who do not know Emily, of course, we will dive into who she is, all about her podcast, how we met. For those of you who follow Female Soulpreneurs, my other podcast, she's been on there too. And I will link everything in the podcast description. But hello, Emily, welcome.
Hello, Lais. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so honored. I'm so grateful that you're doing this. So for those who do not know, Emily is one of my space clearing clients. That's how we originally met. And that was more than a year ago now, I assume. Huh? Mm-hmm. Gosh, time flies.
I know. Yes. Yeah, it was in spring of last year. Yeah.
Yes.
I think March or April.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what I wanted to dive into today, amongst other things, is the fact that Emily and her husband were recommended to sell their house back in the States. And I wanted to share about what happened since then. Like they had this whole transformation and like a whole new lifestyle that I can't wait for Emily to share, of what happens when you take that permission slip. But sometimes that's all I do, right? It's give people the permission. Hey, you know what? It's okay. Sell your house, move on. There's something better waiting for you. And to just encourage people to step out of that traditional thinking, I bought my forever home. I have to stay here forever, even though nothing is working out in that house. And it's actually causing serious harm or health issues for people, that it's okay to let go. And I think it was so beautiful to witness you guys take that decision and to let go and to detach and, you know, all of it. But before we go into this, can you share just a little bit about who you are, who's Mitch, your husband, and a little bit of your background before we dive into space clearing?
Sure. So I have a podcast called The Healing Corner with Emily Tennison, and my husband Mitch is a design. He owns a design consultancy. So we met together in Chicago at a design agency where I was doing account work and he was a design director, and we met there. And we both are super into design and visual arts. We both have art degrees. And we also are now sort of spiritual seekers. We find ourselves being really drawn to spirituality and energy work, and much, I'm sure, of what led us to finding you. So we came to see you, I guess, after we had lived in Seattle for a little bit. We decided to live there, and we ended up having a baby there. And when he was about 1 year old, we made the decision to take a full-time job for me back in Chicago that moved us there. And so the only reason we did this was because we wanted some more financial stability, and then also to be near my parents who live in the Chicago suburbs. I grew up there, and we wanted to explore if that would be something that would make us happy living in the Midwest again and being close to family. So that's what brought us back to the area.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh, you really? Oh, okay. Yeah. So we felt some excitement and kind of also some urgency around finding a home when we got back to the Chicago area. So we had been looking for a few months and finally found a home that was about 10 minutes away. Actually, my husband will say it's 7 minutes exactly. We timed it one time. 7 minutes from my parents, and really convenient if you're living there. You know, it's on a train line. It was walkable to a downtown area. It had a lot of resources for kids and for families, and it was a wonderful place, you know, to raise children.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So maybe you want to share like what even brought you to the decision to contact a space clearing expert?
Sure. I can dive into that story. So I'll back up a little bit. When we were in the house buying process in the Chicago suburbs, we found our home that we ended up purchasing, and I was probably more into the house than my husband was. He hadn't really given it a second thought until I said, hey, this house was super cute. It was in a great location. I liked that it was on top of a hill. We loved sort of the vibe of the neighborhood was really nice. We noticed there were a lot of kids on the street. So as a parent, that becomes important, later. So we took a second look at it. We were able to get a great price on the house. We ended up buying it. And from the moment that we moved in, essentially, my husband started to experience like health problems in there. And we weren't, at first we thought, oh, maybe it's just stress, because we were, stressed from like leaving Seattle, which we loved. We were, he was looking for work at the time. We were adjusting to everything that being new. And so we wrote it off for a little bit. And then after about a year, we decided like, oh no, something deeper is happening. So we started looking into functional medicine. He won't mind me sharing that he is healing from an autoimmune condition. And so he was already on pharmaceuticals at the time. And we explored a functional medicine doctor for about a year. So really overhauling his nutrition. I did the same thing because, like, as you know, right, when you have a partner or a family, it's much easier if you're all just kind of on the same diet.
Definitely.
I ended up doing it with him, and it's called the autoimmune protocol. Anyway, we did that for about a year, and his condition improved quite a bit. So he was experiencing symptoms of like sinus infections, coughing, just lethargy, like just very, slow, I guess, and just brain fog, all these things. And so diet improved the majority of it. However, he still was experiencing these like chronic sinus infections and coughing, like every morning and every night, pretty much. So we did that. Then we did mold remediation. I thought maybe it's mold. And so we had someone basically tear down all of our walls in our basement.
Oh my
looking
goodness.
for mold. Yeah, we wanted to remodel anyways. So we thought, well, just rip it all out. And they found nothing. They found some like latent like asbestos. They're like, you don't have to dig this up, but like you could if you wanted to. And so we said, oh, just take care of it. And so we got all that cleaned out. But there was no mold there. And so another year goes by. We're still experiencing the same stuff. I had a second mold company come in. They were scratching the floorboards of our kitchen. They were making holes in our walls. They did air testing. It's like one of the most reputable companies in Illinois. And they also did not find mold. And my husband was saying, I'm telling you, it feels like it's in the walls of this house. And he was there. I said, there's nothing here. Like, they're not finding anything. So finally, I think it was the final year we were there, we were also just arguing a lot. Like I found us feeling just sort of unhappy with the routine that we had created and this life we had created there, where we're both working long hours. And although we loved our neighborhood and our neighbors, there was something about the vibe of the house or just the lifestyle, being in the Midwest, that we found ourselves craving more. And so we were noticing that we were just, arguing a lot. The pandemic had just happened.
Oh gosh.
Everyone's lives, right, had like sort of
totally
with other people, but especially ours. And we were also enjoying like these guests I was having on my podcast, which had moved into energy healing work. And so one of my guests, Marissa Cecilia, is an energy healer in Boston. And her and I started to have a conversation about energetic like protection and healing. And she had mentioned something called space clearing. And I had told her like, oh, that's interesting. We have this one room in our house that's a little weird. It's my son's room. It feels off in there. He doesn't like sleeping in there by himself. And maybe that's something I should look into. And so she was just raving about the effects of it. And so that got me on this like search, right, locally in Chicago. I emailed no less than 12 people in my area.
So many.
And no one got back to me, Lais. Nobody.
That's crazy.
So unusual. I know. She said, Marissa she said, if you can, find someone local that can come to your home. And so no one was responding. It had been like 10 days, right, since I had sent these emails. And so finally I said, okay, I'll open it up to like a remote space clearer. And so I did a Google search for that, and your name popped up on the first Google page, which was wonderful. So
So fun.
it's so much fun. And I thought, okay, I'm going to check her out, and I'm looking at your website. And what really sold me was actually the questions that you ask, right? Like, these are some questions you might want to ask if you think you need like some space clearing. And I remember just thinking like yes to every single one. It was like, are you experiencing health issues? I was like, oh my God, yes. Are you and your partner fighting? I was like, yes, we are, and is one of the rooms in your house feel weird or whatever? And so it was just like checking each thing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so ready to pay Lais to do this. And then I thought, let's just meet her first. And so that's kind of how it all came to be. And we would not have gotten there had we not exhausted, right? Like all these other sort of like quote unquote practical things like doctors and mold remediation and all that stuff. It really opened our eyes to, well, maybe there's something energetically happening. So that's how we came to meet you.
Wow, no, that's amazing. Especially, it's incredible that 12 people did not come back to you. That's insane.
No, I thought that, and it was funny because after I contacted you and we decided to move forward, then people started responding. So I thought, oh, I think I was just meant to meet Lais. Yeah.
After 10 days, that's a long time to reply.
I know. I was very surprised. I thought,
well,
very
lucky
strange.
me, lucky me.
Yes,
Because, oh
lucky
my God.
me too.
You guys, since then we became friends, and Emily has been such a source of expansion for me, my business. It's incredible. But yes, let's just continue first with the story here before I share what the source of inspiration you've been to me. Yes,
sounds good. I can do that too. Yeah.
So you contacted me and you scheduled yourself in for a free video chat.
I did, yes. And I remembered you explaining the process. And then I also remembered you saying that you were already receiving messages about our space and that you were already sensing a female spirit. And we just thought, you know what, we will take advantage of your assessment, which I think is like $97 to have you just like really dive deeply into our space. And if there's something there, we can decide to move forward. If not, we can just say like, nice to meet you. Thanks for surveying our space. So you surveyed our space. And I remember you came back and said, okay, guys, a lot of information came through. And in the decade that I've been doing this, your home is like one of the worst cases I've ever seen.
Oh God.
Which we weren't really expecting to hear. Right. And I don't know why. I think it's because like, I don't know, we had like a cute house, and it didn't, I don't know, we weren't expecting that. And so immediately I remember you saying that a lot of domestic violence had taken place in our home. And we sort of got chills hearing that because we lived in a very old farmhouse type building, I think it was built in 1905. And, you had said that a lot of that energy was living in the walls still, and that a woman had even been strangled in our home, which was disturbing to hear. And also that the couple before us, we were sort of taking on their energy, and they had gotten divorced while living in the house. Yes. And so a lot of that energy perhaps was affecting our relationship and also just our energy in general. And then you had also mentioned that our home sat over a body of water. And I thought to myself, like, what is Lais saying? And then Mitch, who was joining the call with me, said, oh yeah, there's those two wells that we had to get capped on our property before we moved in. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so you had said, yes, it's one thing if the water beneath your home is moving, right? But it's another if it's just sitting there stagnant, because all that energy has nowhere to go. And it was sort of just like coming up into the walls of our home, which is exactly what my husband had intuited. And then you had said too, that you had been sensing that Mitch was sort of energetically sensitive, and that it was very unhealthy for him to be in this kind of environment. And I remember asking like, oh, it's weird because Johnny and I feel okay. And it was sort of decided like, oh, perhaps, your husband is sort of like the canary in the coal mine, being like, hey, there's something like not quite right. And so you had said, this is what's happening. And so that could be an explanation. And then, okay, so I thought that was it. But then you said, oh no, there's, 3 spirits that are in your home still. There's one kind of like overarching spirit that doesn't want anyone to live in your home and is giving off kind of this negative energy. And there's another spirit who died from tuberculosis who used to live in your home.
Yes.
And he's been chasing your husband around, and that could be a reason why your husband is coughing so much. And then thirdly, you had mentioned that there was an old woman that really liked to follow my son around. She wasn't like a malevolent spirit, but it might be creeping your son out, right? And so I thought, oh my gosh. And then there were other things too. I remember you said, actually in my son's room, which we felt had a kind of a strange energy, that there was some postnatal depression in that room. And there was just a lot happening, energetically in our house. Yes. And at that moment we thought, okay, well, there's of course no question, like we would like to clear everything. And we asked you about, what you could do. And you said that you could clear the spirits and clear the energy and kind of bring in a protector of the space, but you couldn't do anything about the water. And you also had said that you don't often recommend that your clients like leave the property or move, but in this case, it might be a good idea because it could be really harmful for Mitch, especially. And so we had already been thinking about moving anyways. And so we thought, well, gosh, this is a really nice excuse or a permission slip, right? Yes. To move forward with those ideas. So,
probably quicker than you thought then.
Quicker than I thought. But you know what? It all kind of came together. And I remember thinking too about your questions. Like one of them was like, are you having a hard time selling your home, or are you looking to sell your home? Energetic space clearing can be really helpful. And I thought, well, gosh, we want to clear it anyways, but if we're going to move, this could really help in the sale of our house. So then we decided to move forward with the space clearing. It was great.
Oh my God. Yeah. What a story. Well, first of all, I have to share with everyone that I was so surprised when I logged on. Suddenly there was Emily, but also her husband, which never happens because usually it's just the woman of the household who presents herself on the call.
That is so interesting to me.
Yeah, I loved seeing the two of you there, and Mitch equally involved and interested in what was happening. So I really enjoyed that aspect already. And so I just remember how bad I felt that I had to come back and share like this terrible news because I didn't even know you wanted or might sell the house. So for me, this was like devastating to just have to share, look, I don't think it's a good idea to stay there for too long.
Yes.
But totally, it was the energy, of course, lots of it I could have cleared and I cleared it. But this element of the water that was so sickening to Mitch, I didn't want him to get any sicker than he already was, of course. So, and the funny part was that as I was doing the space clearing and the space clearing guides came in, at some point, they already showed me Mitch's higher self, like parts of his energy was already rooting in Costa Rica.
So crazy.
Country. And he was happy there, like in my vision, he was like really thriving and smiling, and he were getting along as a couple. And I think I shared with you guys then, look, his higher self doesn't even want to be there anymore. He's already somewhere else.
Yes.
And so it's rare that I have to tell people, look, it's better if you sell the house, but it's also my responsibility to share what I think is right. So I did that. And I just loved how you guys very quickly came to the conclusion that, let's clear the thing also for the next owners, which I love that you did that. So they can at least come into a more neutral space without spirits and without the divorce energy, which is a huge thing, by the way. It's a common phenomenon that when couples move into a divorce home, they start fighting and they start absorbing that divorce energy and just get divorced eventually. It's crazy. A lot of
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to you for sort of opening our eyes to this unseen world, because prior to meeting you, we hadn't really given energy like a second thought. And I remember you saying that in other countries, it's very common to do clearings. Like in the Western world, it's it's really not. But like in Bali, for instance, I remember you saying like you would never purchase a property or a house without having someone assess it energetically first.
Yeah,
Like,
totally. It's like part of their culture. It's like no go.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I loved how you guys then decided to sell the house, move on, and not be so attached to, about this house. We should keep it.
Right.
Yes, and then I think not long after, you guys decided to.
We did. Yeah. I think it was that next week we contacted our realtor who we had
Yes.
spoken with the year before, and it didn't quite feel right. The timing was not right. But what's amazing is that we contacted him and he said, "Oh, you guys, this is a great time. Like the housing market is really good for sellers." And so we ended up selling our home for like 25% more
Oh,
than we would have the
amazing.
year prior.
Nice.
So, which is amazing. And we actually, it wasn't quite 25%. Yeah, it was around there. But I'm doing the math in my head. So we were excited about that prospect. And so we ended up just kind of moving forward, like, okay, let's see what happens. And so we spoke to you in April. We put our home on the market at the end of May, and so quickly. And in America, we have Memorial Day weekend, which is like a holiday weekend. Thought we'll just put it up on the market, see what happens. And we sold the house in 4 days. So it was very quick.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was actually the first family that came in to see it. And so we felt really good about it going to another family with a small child that could have an energetically clear home and actually just enjoy our neighbors in the street that we had left behind. So it worked out beautifully. Like, and we could tell it was aligned because everything flowed. We did put a lot of effort into preparing the house, by painting and, doing a few things, clearing everything out, purging all of our belongings, and then really deciding on our next move, which was interesting because we were in this space before we talked with you about, gosh, we would really like to take a vacation. Like Costa Rica seems interesting. Maybe we take like a 2-week vacation there. But then we thought, well, gosh, we'd really like to sell our house. So like, what are we gonna, we can't take a vacation and like, where are we going to move? And so we thought, well, once we, talked with you and you said, guess what? Like Mitch's higher self is already kind of in Costa Rica. You're intuiting, or you had intuited that Costa Rica would be a good experience for us. We thought, well, gosh, what if we just take a big leap and do like one of our older son, let's do his kindergarten year in Costa Rica. And that way we can sell our house, have this experience in Costa Rica, and not have to worry about turning around so fast to find another place to live. And so I still can't believe it, but we were like, yeah, let's just do that. So,
I know, it's just amazing that your son, I think he was 4 or 5 at the time.
Yeah, he would have been 4 at the time. Yeah.
4, yeah. So you just packed up and went to this whole new country and put him in the kindergarten, and
we did. Yeah. It's just so wild, but it worked out. We had some money from the sale of our home. My husband's able to work from anywhere. So he had some projects that were still active.
Right.
We took a little time. Yeah. We took a little time to research some schools, which we felt would be good anchors for us in Costa Rica. Like, okay, at least schools will kind of maybe drive where we end up exploring. So yeah, so we did that and took a few weeks to explore the country, and then landed, in near where we are. So
yes. And then
yeah.
I remember, I don't even know where I was, probably in France, because I was traveling through France last summer. I got a message from you sharing some amazing news.
Yes. So 2 days before our flight left for Costa Rica, I suspected that I might be that I was pregnant, and that wasn't really like in our plan at all. We had talked about having another child, and I think, during the period of time where we were really like arguing quite a bit, we thought like, well, it's not a good time, right, to bring a child into the world right now when we're not feeling like solid in our relationship. And so, so that summer we just thought, you know what, like if this is meant to be, it will happen when it needs to. And so we're kind of feeling ready for exploring having another child. And so, we got pregnant right away, and, which is hilarious because, 2 days before our flight leaves, like we're already packed. We had stored all of our baby stuff in storage. Like I didn't have literally one single thing to bring with us. I didn't have maternity clothes. I had nothing. And so, and it ended up working out better, I think, this way. So we got to Costa Rica. I continued, I was pregnant. And so I just really took advantage of the time here. I was able to, eventually take like a pregnancy test just to confirm, even though I already knew. But you just want to make sure about these things, I guess. And it was better to not travel with a whole bunch of stuff, just a new part of myself emerged that was trusting in the universe, like providing as things were needed, and that we would find the right situation, to give birth, and also to, get any clothes that we needed or whatever we needed. And so that's what happened.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And I know there's a couple of things that are so inspiring that I want to talk about it. One is the fact that while you were pregnant, I think you met 1 or 2 other women who, like you, all felt they had to come to Costa Rica, and they were all giving birth there for reasons unbeknownst to them why it had to be Costa Rica. But there were a few of you that were flocking to this place to give birth from other countries. And I think one was from Peru, if I'm not mistaken, and the other one, I'm not sure, maybe US as well.
She actually was living in Guatemala at the time.
Oh, right.
So another like Central American country. So, what's funny, Lais, is like if I could like go back 5 years, my former self would be like horrified at this conversation, like, what are you doing? But now it just feels so natural. Like I remember in our space clearing call with you, you had said, when we had asked, like probing you about Costa Rica, you said, oh, like, it seems like your higher selves just really want to have an experience there. And we thought, okay. But it then became obvious that like, oh no, like you were meant to give birth there. That was the experience. Like you were meant to have this child there. And so, yes, during my pregnancy, I met a woman, another American, who lived in Guatemala for several years. She met her partner there. She was, I think, 30 weeks pregnant when she got this intuitive download about like, you need to go to Costa Rica to have this baby. And there was no rhyme or reason. It was just like, this overwhelming feeling that she had. And so her and her partner actually separated, which made it, I think, a little easier for her. So she came to Costa Rica, and she quickly found, a midwife and a place to live. And she had some support from her parents at the time.
Wow.
And she had an inheritance, I believe, to be able to like purchase a home. But yeah, she ended up giving birth here. And all she said was like, I just had this overwhelming feeling that I need to give birth to my daughter here. And I've just thought to myself, oh, that's interesting, not realizing that like I was experiencing the exact same thing. And so I also met another woman another American actually, who didn't grow up too far from me in Illinois, who lived in Peru for 15 years. Wow. Met her Peruvian partner there, gave birth to a baby there, was living in Cusco, which is near Machu Picchu, on the way up to the, in the Andes. She started like a retreat center. She had a very full life there with in-laws and family nearby. And very quickly after she got pregnant, got a download saying like, feeling into like, you need to be in the rainforest. And Costa Rica was like what came to mind in order to, give birth to this soul that wants to come in. And so she also moved here like halfway through her pregnancy.
This is totally led by spirit. This is really no coincidence.
You think so?
The 3 of you had to go there at this specific time to give birth. There must have been.
Isn't that so strange? I know. In the exact same area too. It's like not even, and who knows, maybe there's other women in other parts of Costa Rica, but we are in the southern zone of Costa Rica, in like it's called like the wet rainforest. So it's on the Pacific side, and a very specific like microclimate. And like all three of us are here. There's other women that are here too, giving birth. So I don't know if I mean, you would be able to speak to this, but I know that you had recently mentioned like, oh, your baby wanted to be born here. And it's a beautiful place to give birth. Like we are surrounded, as I speak right now, like we're in the rainforest. So all I hear is like a rushing river and like birds chirping, and I can see the ocean. And besides construction going on around us, like it's very quiet.
Beautiful.
So a beautiful place. Yeah.
Yes. So I really wanted to thank you for sharing, by the way. I think it's just such an inspiration to hear that.
Yes. Yeah. You know, and when I retell the story, I'm also inspired by it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened.
Beautiful. But then even further along, like as you were pregnant and then you were about to give birth. Another inspiring story here that I want Emily to share with all of you is how she gave birth, because that was very different to your first birth that you gave in the US. Can you share a bit what you did?
Sure. So with my first pregnancy, we were in Seattle, and I had a very fleeting thought about doing a home birth. And I had some family members unprompted be like, well, I hope you're not doing a home birth, out there with your first baby and blah, blah, blah. And this was 6 years ago. And I remember internalizing those messages thinking like, oh yeah, that's crazy, to do. And so I hired a doula. I found like a female OB/GYN team, right, that really champions like vaginal births. And I thought to myself, like, this is it. Like, this is great. I'm going to come in with like my birth plan and like really be able to like make it be my way and all the things. And so I was very prepared. And I also had found a new love with nutrition. And so I was very conscious about what I was putting in my body, and I was exercising. Like I was very proud of myself actually for what I had done. And so when it came time to give birth, I progressed very quickly. And so when the doula came to my house, she said something like, if you want to do a natural birth in the hospital, you need to wait until you're very far along before we leave, because the act of like getting up, getting in the car, changing your environment, it disrupts your hormones so much that like birth can stall, right? And I didn't realize that birth is such a physiological process. It is like literally, it's just like a biological thing, right? You need to feel safe. You need to feel like comfortable enough to get in the zone to give birth. And so I thought, okay. And so I progressed very quickly. And then I was like ready to push this baby out as we were like leaving the house. And so she's like, next time we'll leave a little sooner. And so we got to the hospital, and long story short, they weren't ready for us. There were a lot of things that happened, like, my labor completely stalled. So I was pushing and pushing without contractions for like 2 hours, which I look back on, it's like ludicrous. And so I ended up doing a hospital birth, and it was fine. We had a happy baby, healthy baby. And it was okay. Would I do it again? No. Like I wanted to just have my own experience. So I told my husband, I said, hey, if we make the decision to have another child, would you be open to doing a home birth? I really want to do that. And he said, sure. So when we discovered we were pregnant and going to Costa Rica, I told him, I said, it's still really important to me to do a home birth. And he was just, bless him. He was just like, all right, I trust you. Like, we'll figure it out,
Amazing.
So there's, there's so much to giving birth, right? And I really feel for women who have like traumatic experiences in the hospital, or, feel that like the hospital saved them and, they were able to give birth because of a medical practitioner. On the opposite end of that, there are women who do like free birthing, which is amazing, right? It's like where you just literally give birth by yourself or with your partner. There's no medical attendee. And to us, that felt a little extreme. It kind of felt like, in some circles, it's talked about like, this is like another trauma response. It's like a trauma response to like the medical system, right? Where like you are alone Like
Right.
historically women, right, they give birth in the presence of other women.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely wanted that female support. So we set the intention, like, we'd love to find a midwife here. And so we found a midwife. Very serendipitously, my husband took our son out to breakfast one morning during my first trimester, where I was like exhausted and just wanting to rest. And this American family had like a dad that was wearing an Oklahoma shirt. And in my husband's world, Oklahoma is like a really amazing football rival to his beloved Nebraska Huskers. And so they hit it off right away, right? They're chatting. And then somehow got on the subject of like me being pregnant, and that his son had done a home birth, like him and his wife had done a home birth here. And so they recommended this midwife, who ended up being our midwife, and she is incredible. So we ended up working with her. And so it's a long story, but we ended up I ended up going into labor a little bit early. So we ended up using a recommendation by her, another midwife. And so we it all worked out actually very well. Like we ended up doing a home birth, and there was no medical intervention. I had chosen to not do ultrasounds this time, or like any sort of glucose testing, or, you know, the things that women typically have to go through in like a Western culture. I will say the other reason we felt very strongly about doing home birth, especially in Costa Rica, is because the moment that you set foot in a hospital, your chances of having like a cesarean birth or a C-section is 90%. That is like, yeah, like the rate is extremely high. Like 30% is very high. And I think it's like 30 or 35% in the US. That's the percentage of cesarean births. And in Central America, it's almost all of them. And so that was the exact opposite, right? Of what I wanted to do.
Yes,
so,
totally.
Yes. So yes, I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. And our baby Matteo is there. He's the cutest thing.
Thank you. Yes.
Happy,
yes.
healthy little boy.
Happy, healthy little boy. We felt extremely supported by the midwives that we were working with. The original midwife that we had hired, she knows everybody in Costa Rica. You know, it's a small country, and she knows all the midwives all over. And so it was great to just be held and, you know, supported by these women. Excuse me. She had a wonderful doula that she recommended, and it was such a peaceful experience. It was just so nice. And then to be able to enjoy this postpartum time in nature, like we are, is like the greatest gift.
So beautiful. We were exchanging voice messages a few weeks ago, I believe. And you said something along the lines, how empowered you feel now that you went through all of this experience with the home birthing and all of it. And that was just so nice to hear, you know?
Thank you.
It was beautiful. I mean, I met you over a year ago, and you're so different now than before. Like you look different, you have totally different energy. It's just a whole different Emily.
Well, thank you. Well, you know what? I've said this before to you, but our session with you was such a catalyst. Like, I can't say it enough. It was so activating to work with you and to just have a lot of our intuitive feelings validated. Like, house isn't right. This life isn't right. You know, there's more for you.
I love that sometimes my job is purely giving this permission slip to people who really need to hear it, but they had already suspected it somehow. But as you're talking about activations, I just want to dive into that as well, because I want people to spend more time with people who activate them. And by activating, I mean your life expands, you feel more inspired, your energy grows. And that's what Emily has done to me, because what happened after I did her space clearing and she moved to Costa Rica, I was on her podcast. So you invited me to be on your podcast. And we talked about the whole story on your podcast too. And I'm going to link your podcast, of course, in the description for people to find it. But since then, I had so many people signing up for discovery calls and getting an assessment for their space and going ahead with space clearings. And after that, even becoming clients, because I'm a healer. So they come for, you know, healing packages. And amazing clients too, like really beautiful women that I'm so honored to be working with. And it's just done like this expansion on my space clearing business and my business in general. And also because of Emily, I started my first podcast. So deeply inspired by everything she does, I did a podcast for female business owners. And so this podcast here now is my second podcast. But again, I wouldn't have started the first one without Emily, and surely not the second one, purely because she's just such an inspiration of how she shows up. Her podcast, she does it so professionally. I love her podcast, so I want everybody to jump on it. And I want everybody to think about who are the people in your life who activate you, who make you become a better person, like who makes you grow, who makes you expand, not just professionally, but even like, private life. Because that's the people we need to surround ourselves with more, and then less so the other where the energy extracts and where we feel like little, and where we feel disempowered. And yeah, so I'm just so grateful that you are this person in my life, and we kept in touch, and just it's beautiful. So thank you for that.
Oh, likewise, Lais. I mean, I'm so grateful that we're friends now, and just to have had this experience. I will say at the time it felt like a bit scary, right, to dive into this unknown world that I really love so much, like because a lot of people around me at the time, I think, thought we were crazy, and I'm sure still do. They look at our lives, they're like, what are you guys doing? But it feels, as you said, it feels really expansive to follow these intuitive hits that we're getting, and also to be friends with people that light us up, like you, and are taking us places that we don't even know yet. And so I would just say, to anyone that's curious, to really pursue those little nudges that you have, even if it feels really scary.
I know, and you guys did amazing with that. Like, I'm really so proud of you guys. I mean, your son who's 5 now, he's learning Spanish, he's going, to school, he's meeting all these international kids that he's playing with, and I think he's in a Spanish football club, soccer club.
Yes, yeah, he's playing soccer. He's like in a soccer league now, and it's amazing to look at him and just realize how much he's grown, not just physically, but like, emotionally, spiritually. Like, he's very, aware. Like, kids that are coming into the world now are just so much more like conscious and aware of things, and they don't have all this baggage like we do.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. No, you guys did so well, and it was just so beautiful to witness your journey. My God. And also thank you for sharing it here so openly with the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure.
So what I also wanted to mention, just in case anybody needs a copywriter, Emily has spaces maybe for 1 or 2 projects. So if anybody needs professional copywriting, be it for your brand, be it for a website or sales page, I know you do amazing work on that.
Oh, thank you.
By the way, do you do any consultancy for people starting their own podcast? They need somebody to come in, tell them what to do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've only worked, I don't have a huge client roster on that, but yes, I've helped a couple people now start their own podcasts, and would be happy to consult with anybody that's interested or just overwhelmed, right, by the beginnings of a podcast and what to do, and would be happy to guide anyone that is seeking guidance.
Love it. I'm going to link one of the episodes that I already had with you on my other podcast, where we talked about how to start your own free podcast. But of course, there's so much more to it. And I'm sure everybody can benefit from some coaching or consultancy, or even just, you're so good at holding people's hands and helping them with their mindset. I know you did that for me. I was freaking out.
I'm so glad. Well, I'm so glad you followed through on it. It's amazing.
Yes. So it's a whole journey, the podcasting world. So if anybody needs, somebody amazing as Emily to hold your hand, to work on your mindset, and also the technical aspects, of course, she's your girl. So please get in touch. All the details will be below on the podcast description. But that concludes our talk for now, my dear. I know we talked quite a bit. I hope you're not too exhausted.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, so super fun.
Oh, nice. Okay, so thank you so much. And for the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Leave us a review if you enjoy the podcast, and I'll see you in the next episodes. So goodbye for now.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lais.
Bye.